Hello guys, how are you doing? I hope you are doing very well. Guys, today we're gonna talk about light, okay? So it means some things about light. Why do we need light? And what are the types of lights and branches of light? Let's learn something. So, let's start. Bismillah. Guys, light is a form of energy that is essential to see things. Of course, you have studied before in the first semester that we have different types of energy, right? Heat energy, sound energy, movement energy, and one of them was light energy. So, light is a form of energy. Until here is completely clear because we all know that light is a type of energy, right? One of the types of energy was light. So it means light is a form of energy, the type of energy, the kind of energy. But for what? Why do we need this kind of energy? What's the benefit of this energy? Is that essential to see things. It means we need light to see things. If you look here, look, here is all dark, right? You cannot see the color and any written here. Look, after turning on the light, you can see the colors and the written here, right? It means because of the light we can see. Otherwise, we cannot see things around us without light. Every place will be dark. We need at least a little of light to see things around us. So, and that's all about light. Light is a form of energy, so we know it. But why do we need? It's essential to see things. We need light to see things. Okay? So let's go for the other parts. And guys, of course, when we have light, this light is gonna come from somewhere, right? So, but what do we call this name, this place that the light comes from? We call this the source of the light. Okay, the source of light. So, it's the first place that the light comes from. We call this light. For example, in here we don't have light, that's why we cannot see anything. But when we turn on the light, the bulb will be the source of light to see things around us. In here too, the bulb, when we turn on this bulb, we will see others. Okay, we can see the light. We can see the other parts that kind of light. Okay, but according to the darkness and according to the amount of the light, then you can see things around yourself. If the light is too much, you can see things very clearly. If it's less, you cannot see very clearly. It's not easy to see things. It's not only when we have light we can see everything. No, according to the amount of the light. If the amount of the light is too much, you can see everything clearly and easily. But if the light is less, you see the things are going to be hidden. You cannot see everything clearly. You have to go closer to you have to focus on this to see better. So, the source of the light is the first place that the light comes from. The first place that the light starts to spread around, to move around for the other sides, to make the other sides light. So we call this source of this place that light comes from source of light. So, and we have light reflection. Maybe you already know that what reflection is. So it's throwing back or bouncing back. So, but when does it happen? When does it happen? Of course, reflection is gonna happen by when something move. We need something else to be a barrier for this, to prevent this. So in here too, the light reflection is throwing light back when it arrives at a barrier. So we have this barrier here right now. You see this place. When the light comes to the barrier, after arriving the barrier, it's going to reflect or bounce back to another place. Reflect off, okay? We call this reflect off and bouncing back. We call this light reflection. It means the light comes from the source. This is the source of the light. We said the first place that the light comes from is the source of the light. We studied before. That's why we say this is the source of the light and this is the light that comes from the source. And When this light comes from the source, arrive any barrier, we call this the other types of the light reflected light or light reflection. Okay, so this is light reflection when the light comes on the at the barrier and it's bounced back to another place. You see, after arriving the barrier, it's go down. After arriving the next barrier, it's gonna to go another place. If we have another barrier here, it's gonna go to the other side. You see, so I mean, if we have another barrier here, after this, when it's gonna go to, I mean, the right side, if you have another barrier, if you have million barriers, we will have million reflection. But of course, after each reflecting, the amount of the light will be decreased. It's gonna get less and less and less continuously. So the light reflection is throwing light back when it arrives at the barrier. Without barrier, there is no reflection. It's like sound. We have studied before. We have studied sound, right? We said when the sound comes from the source of the sound, when it arrives a barrier, like the wall in your room, in any other places, when it arrives the barrier, it's gonna bounce back. It's gonna come back. Like a ball, when you hit a ball, when you throw a ball, when it's arrived on the wall, like for example, you throw the ball to the wall. When it arrives the wall, the ball is gonna come back, right? Why? Because it arrives a barrier at a barrier. So that's why light reflection is exactly like reflecting the ball, okay? Bouncing back the ball. So light reflection is throwing light back when it arrives a barrier. But for the ball, we can say throwing the ball back when it's arrived at the barrier. So only the name of the light changed to ball. So the ball, when you hit it, when you throw it to the wall is going to be a barrier, and when the ball arrives at the barrier, it's gonna bounce back, reflect back. So we say this light reflection. When the light arrives at the barrier, it's gonna reflect. It's gonna go to another side, changing direction. But be careful, guys. We have something else. Maybe you say, okay, why in here the light is not gonna go to another direction? It's gonna reflect, but directly up, straightly for up. Why? Because the source of the light, it's straightly arrive. I mean, send the light straightly to the barrier. When the light comes straightly, it's gonna reflect back straightly. When the light comes from the outside, it's gonna go for the next side. For example, if you send the light from right side, from the left side, it's gonna reflect to the right side. If it's from the right side, it's reflect to the left side. You see, it's gonna reflect to different directions. By the way, we cannot say only left side, but I mean the most of the light will be for the left side. But of course, it will be reflected for all around. That's why we can see everything around us. It's not only one side will be dark, one side will be light. Okay, so every places will be full of the light, and we can see things in here, guys. For example, if you just bring here, if there is no light in the room, if you look at the hole to see the coin, you cannot see it because there is no light. We said light is essential to see things. Without light, we cannot see. But when she sent the light, she used the source of the light. This is the source of the light, the first place the light comes from. So the light will go and hit the barrier. The coin will be the barrier. And this, when it hits the barrier, it's gonna reflect to her eyes. Then she can see the coin clearly. And something else is here, guys. You have to know. When the light arrives any kind of barrier, when it reflects, it will be the image of this barrier. For example, if the coin is the barrier, we will see the coin. If the wall is the barrier, we will see a wall, okay? The wall. So if a phone is gonna be the barrier for the light, we will see the phone. If light comes from any object to our eyes, we will see this object, because the reflection of light from any barrier will be the image of this barrier. Reflection of light of any barrier is gonna be the image of this barrier. You understand this, right? So easily. For example, if we when the bar if this light comes from this barrier to my eyes, I will directly see this place. Why? Because light comes from here It means it took the image of this place. When the light comes from the coin here to my eyes, it took the image of the coin to my eyes. It's gonna give me information about this barrier. It's gonna give me the image of this barrier that comes from. If the light comes from a door, we will see a door. Why? Because the light will give us information about the door. Wherever the light comes for your eyes is gonna give the information, an image of this place. The light comes from a window, you will see a window. Because the window reflected to your eyes, it means the image of the window will come to your eyes. So that's it. That's how we see things. That's why we see essential to see things. So let's go for the next part. Until here, light is a form of energy, as we know, and it's essential to see things. We cannot see. After turning on, we can see. So the source of the light is the first place. We said the first place that light comes from is gonna be source of the light. The source of the light. So the light reflection is throwing light back when it arrives at the barrier. When we have barrier, the light will throw back, and this throwing back will be reflected. We call this reflection. It means we have only one source of the light. I mean one arriving ray. We will see the next page. Arriving ray. The others all will be reflected ray. Another barrier, reflected ray. We can have 100 reflected ray. Okay, but from a source of the light, we have one source of light. After this, after getting out from the source of the light, this is arriving ray, comes from the source of the light. This is arriving, and here, this is arriving ray. And the first time that the light comes down, this is arriving ray. We call the others reflected ray, because all others have been reflected by some barriers. So now it's arriving ray. This is one reflected ray. This is after one we have second reflected ray. If you have another barrier, third reflected ray. Another barrier, fourth reflected ray. You see, after each ray, we will have one arriving ray, but we can have more than one reflected ray. So light travels in a straight line. So guys, we have to understand this. That's why we say we have reflection. Otherwise, light will straightly go. Without reflection, it's not gonna go to different sides. But when we have a barrier, light will reflect to another side. Another barrier to another side. That's why light will move around all of the room and all around us. Because of reflection. Otherwise, light will go straightly and without reflecting, if we don't have barrier. The original type of light is straight, okay? Straight light. When the light is straight, after arriving any barrier, it will reflect to different side. And what's ray, guys? Ray is a narrow beam of light. So these are the rays of the light. You see, the source of the light have many rays, okay? These rays means we can say the first light that comes out from the source of the light. Not only, because you have two types of rays, okay? The light, then these arrows, any kind of the light will be the ray of the light. But which ray? Two types. One is arriving ray, one is reflected ray. So let's see, what is arriving ray? So arriving ray is the light rays that come from the source of the light to an object. The first light that comes from the source, we call this arriving ray. These are arriving ray. Okay, these are arriving rays. Why? Because they come from the source. These are arriving ray because they come from the source too. This is the first place that light comes from. This is arriving ray. Okay, until here, this is arriving ray. After barrier, it's gonna be reflected ray. That's a reflected ray, guys. It is the rate of light that bounces back or reflects off an object. When the light arrived any barrier, it's going to reflect. We studied here, right? We said when it arrives at a barrier, it's gonna reflect. So in here, the same. Okay, when the light comes from the source, this is the source of the light, arrives on the book, or not the book, the table, the pen, pencil, anything around you. When the light arrives, we call this arriving ray. Why arriving? because it's arrived from the source of the light. It means the first ray of the light, okay, the first light that comes from the source of the light. It means arriving ray must come from the source of the light. But after the first, which is arriving ray, comes from the source of the light, after this we can have million reflection like we study here. One reflection, two reflection, and maybe you have three reflections, four reflections, five reflections. We have more according to how many barriers do we have. But be careful, we said that after each reflection some of the light will decrease, okay, because it will spread. All of the light will not go for the next barrier. Some will for some there, some for up, some for down, some will go for the next barrier, some for the next barrier, some for the next barrier, you see. But not all, because of course we said light will go for different direction, you see. That's why all is not gonna go to one side. Some will go for the other sides, but straightly. This is important, straightly, not like waves or something. It's gonna go straightly without when we say straightly, what do we mean by this? It means it's gonna straightly go until it arrives a barrier. It means light is gonna go straightly until it arrives a barrier. When light arrives a barrier, we call this reflected ray after the barrier. So it means reflected ray is the ray of the light that bounces back or reflects off. We can see bounces back, we can see reflects off an object. For example, the light comes from here on the barrier, okay. When it arrives at the barrier, it's gonna go to the different side, okay. So this moving to another side after the barrier, we will call the other one reflected ray. Why? Because it has reflected from something. It's not coming from the source of the light. It has reflected. It means it doesn't come from the source of the light. It comes from an object, another object, not source of the light. In here, we said the light comes from here to the book. After this, when the light from the book goes to her eyes, it means we will say that this is the reflected ray. Why? Why? Because only the first light that comes from the source is arriving ray. After any barrier, if it's book, table, pencil, door, window, the wall, ground, any other things around you, when the light comes from them, even if it's not the source of the light, we will call this reflected ray because it has reflected from something. Something, I mean, it might be book, it might be pencil, it might be pen, any other things. Let's not just give the names. We can say object, any objects, okay? So that's so easy. The first light comes from the source is arriving ray. Arriving ray. This is the first light that comes from the source. After the first light, others that comes by different barriers, that comes from different objects, will be reflected ray. And we have studied in the previous slide how this girl can see the the book. How? We said that any light that comes from any object will give the image of that object, okay? It means the girl can see the book because this light, this reflected ray, is the image of the book. If the light comes from pencil, she can see the pencil. If the light comes from the table, she can see the table. Why? Because we said any light that comes from any object will be the image of the object. But in here, guys, we cannot say the girl only see the reflected ray. No, because we said that light is gonna go for different directions, right? Straightly. So the light can go for here too, right? Here, down, up, right, left, any other side. It means it's right that some light comes from the book, she can see it, so we call this reflected ray because it comes from the book. Book is an object. But of course, some lights can directly go from the source of light to her eyes. So it means this is called, this orange one, you can see, we can say this is arriving ray because it comes from the source, nothing else. And That's all. The ray is the narrow beam of light. We can see here two different directions. These are the narrow of lights. And we have two kinds of rays: arriving ray, reflected ray. Arriving ray is so easy. Only the light comes from the source of light. The source of the light, we can say this is arriving ray. Only that light the first time comes from the source of the light. After this, when it arrives different barriers, it's going to reflect from one barrier to the next one. Next gonna reflect to another place, and it has another barrier reflected to another place. Another place, of course, we have another object will be reflected to another. It means these are all barrier to barrier, object to object. We call them reflected ray. Why? Because it has been reflected, it has been bounced back, it has been reflected off. You see, reflected ray is the light that bounces back, reflects off. What does it mean bounce it back or reflect off? It means we must have something. It's not source of the light, it's something else. It's like we said, like the ball, when you throw the ball to the wall, it's gonna bounce back, right? So the light is same. When it's arrived, any object is gonna bounce back. But you have to know this thing. You will never forget this. When light comes from any object, this light is the image of this object. When light comes from the pencil, this light comes to your eyes is the image of the pencil. When light comes from the door, this light comes from the door is the image of the door. That's why you see the door. That's why you see the pencil, pen, computer, phone, anything around you. The light comes from them to your eyes, and this light is the image of the object. The light comes from any object will be the image of this object. So that was all the lesson for today. Light is a form of energy that is essential to see things. We cannot see things without light. The source of the light, the first place that light comes from, we said source. Done. Light reflection is throwing light back. Guys, we have sound reflection, so it means throwing sound back. Ball reflection, throwing ball back. And light reflection is throwing light back. When you say reflection, it means throwing back, bouncing back, reflecting back, reflecting off. Okay, so throwing light back when it arrives at a barrier. It means we must have a barrier for reflection. Without barrier, we don't have reflection. And we said array is the narrow beam of light that is here. We see they are gonna go straightly. Light is straight, guys. Be careful that light travels in a straight line. Straight. It's not like wave. It's not gonna go for different direction whatever it wants. No, it's gonna go straight. It's gonna change direction after arriving at a barrier. Without a barrier, light will never change its direction. It's gonna go straightly, continuously until it arrives at a barrier. When it arrives at the barrier, it's gonna change direction. But after changing direction, it's again straight. Be careful. When you look here, look at this part. When the light comes on the barrier, it's straight. You see, it's straightly come on the barrier. But after this, it's not gonna go like this. You see, it's not gonna go for different sides. Straightly, then straightly reflect. If you go for this one, straightly comes at the barrier, straightly go to the next barrier, straightly go to get the next one. You see, it means light is straight. After million barriers is going to be straight. It will never be, moving randomly to other side. It must be straight. This is important about light. You have to know light travels in a straight line. Even after the barrier, the first time comes from the source. It's straight to the barrier. After barrier, it's gonna reflect straightly. After this barrier, going to reflect to another barrier straightly. It must be straight. You see the lights here. The light comes straightly, reflects straightly, reflect again straightly. Even we have another one straightly will be reflected. And we have arriving ray and reflected ray. The difference between these two: arriving ray is the light comes from the source. The light comes from the source, and reflected ray is the light that bounces back from or reflects from any object. Okay, any object. That light comes from any object, we call this light reflected ray because it's not the source. After the source, any barrier can make reflected ray. So that's all the lesson for today. I hope you understand. If you have any questions, you can write in the comment, and best wishes.